podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Beauty of Grey. Today, I am joined by Michelle, and I'm also joined by Jake Paul. Jake Paul, welcome so much for coming on The Beauty of Grey.
Hello.
Hello. So happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here too.
So before we kind of dive into our topic today, Jake, can you tell us a little bit about when you hear the word witchcraft and what it means to you to be a witch? If you don't mind kind of maybe jumping in a little bit with that.
Yeah, definitely. So I can only really speak from my personal experience, but I would say that I've been doing witchcraft longer than I've done my professional psychic work. For me, because for me, healing work is a modality that I operate out of, and witchcraft and my magical workings is more of my spirituality, my beliefs, kind of quote faith, if you want to say. And it's not necessarily any particular denomination. I would like to refer myself as a very eclectic witch, pulling from a couple different directions. I, will work with the earth. I will work with, of course, angelic entities, and then some other kinds too. I go a lot with Greek and Roman deities. So it's a really fun ride. I do a lot of spirit work in my witchcraft as well, which is, for our listeners, a form of witchcraft, spirit work, where you kind of essentially have a roster of people that you can kind of call on that will help you with your workings. So it's very earth-based. I work with the seasons of the year. So witchcraft for me is about personal development, stepping into power, expansion of personal will, ability to manifest your own journey, attracting things that are like with what you would like to see in your experience. But I also think that with witchcraft too, I think that there's a really beautiful part. Some refer to it as like the left-hand path, where it's about working through the inner shadow and exploring those parts of ego, exploring parts of hurt or trauma or loss, in a way to really kind of reclaim the soul. It's a really beautifully grounding, inspiring, and really reflective path to walk. And so I always love when I cross paths with people who are just starting out or walk a similar path too, because it's really interesting how you can really sit a lot of people down. Like Michelle and I, when I met Michelle for the first time, I was like, oh my God, we are like two peas in a pod. Like you can just recognize, it's so funny. Witchcraft really is, it's just a way of expressing spirit, I think. It's really quite beautiful, and I'm very thankful to have access to knowledge and tools and resources to be able to practice the way that I do, because it's fun. It's kind of like pulling from a bunch of different things and seeing what we're going to cook up. It's very intuitive.
That it is, for sure. And
yeah.
I think go ahead, Michelle, you're about to say something.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm like, you said that so eloquently and so beautifully.
Oh my
I'm
God.
just like, and then like in the meantime, I'm like, yeah, witchcraft, woohoo! Like it's so funny. No, but like I love the way you said that. Like it's just because it's totally on point. It's absolutely on point.
Like, and you said it in a way that makes it accessible, and it makes it,
absolutely,
and the way that you're speaking, Jake, it makes me feel like anyone can kind of tap into this, and
it's not as scary. Yeah.
But I do feel that there is still, and we're going to continue to unpack this in future episodes, about the trauma and the hesitation to kind of come out of the witchcraft closet. One of the things that we were kind of wanting to talk about today was safety in maybe spell work, ceremonial work, when you go to maybe a seance or a spiritual show, even a spiritual shop. We kind of want to talk about what are ways to protect yourself, maybe some ways that you feel, or maybe some just tips and tricks. So I'm going to start with you, Michelle. What are some things that maybe you've
let's
start with what are some things that maybe you've encountered about maybe energies being directed in a negative way? Maybe I mean, I guess I know I'm giving you, I'm talking about a very loaded question, because we've all encountered, maybe not even intentional energy work, or
absolutely,
thoughts, or, directed at you, and that does affect you.
Well, I do feel like a lot of the times it is unintentional.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't understand just kind of how energy works and how it can kind of come at you. And like, so, you know, say like you're having like, I don't know, you're having a really bad day or something, and you come in contact like with, I don't know, a spiritual person or whatever. It doesn't have to be a spiritual person.
No, it can be
And then
anyone.
that person feels like crap afterwards.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, sorry.
Mhm.
It's just, it's like, for me, it was a lot of trial and error as I was like kind of discovering,
Yeah.
because I like to, a lot of my craft is on the darker side of things. Not all of it, but the majority of it. It's where I'm most comfortable.
Right.
But so I have a lot of protections that I've set up, because I know what I'm working with, and I know that um it can be a little nefarious, and it can be a little sketch. So like I've like things like sigils, and like wearing certain pieces of jewelry, having certain stones with me. I don't really like, I love crystals, and I definitely use them and work with them often. I don't always adhere to that being my sole form of protection.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to rely on any witch thing. Any witch thing. Yeah, a little pen there for you. But like, so like, for instance, like my home is completely outfitted with like, I have sigils like that I use with moon water on my windows, on my doors. Um, I am like, there's black candles freaking everywhere. I make sure that like my home is especially very protected.
Mm-hmm.
When I go out into the world, it can be a little bit different. So like, for people that like, if you're like, say you're going into Reiki rocks,
We love it.
usually Tony has a little plug there. Tony usually has very beautiful energy that is coming out of that place anyway.
Yeah.
It is very rare that I would feel off about anybody, but it's usually about somebody that's bringing in that kind of energy, and then they
Mm.
usually walk right out with it. Um, but sorry, my mind just went whoo. But like, basic forms of protection, of just having certain things that like, maybe something that is, you know, a piece of jewelry that's
Yeah.
blessed, or in, you know, like, I don't usually use the term like blessed, but just something like that's been worked with,
Yeah.
that is its predominant thing, is for protection. Like, I mean, I don't know how well it's going to be protected now, but like this I wear a lot. I have to redo it since it's broken now, but that's okay. Just the chain. But yeah. So
I mean,
it's a loaded question. There's so much
There's so many
involved.
facets.
But yeah, go
there's so
ahead, Jake.
many
Sorry.
layers to it. Yeah, but I mean, like, that's the beauty of witchcraft, though, is that
Yeah,
anything could really be a protective piece.
Absolutely.
Because
absolutely.
I think for me in my practice, the conversation always comes back to accessibility. Like, it can
Mhm.
be as simple as, you know, the necklace that you're wearing right now, as if you
Yep.
take a moment to sit in ceremony, to sit in kind of personal
Yes.
space, have your circle. It can be referred to as a charm, as an amulet, whatever. It's
Mhm.
imbuing the intention. I mean, that's really what witchcraft is it's taking energy, manipulating energy, and crafting intention into outcome.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yes.
so if I were to hold this necklace and to do whatever my kind of personal ceremony is, that's my protective piece.
Mhm.
So you will it, so it be. You know,
Mhm.
and I think that's the beautiful thing too, is that witchcraft is very relying on personal power.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yes.
and there are various aspects of witchcraft across the board where it's drawing power from an outside force, or the belief is that
Mhm.
it comes from, you know, an above. But I think personally in my craft, and it sounds a lot like Michelle's too, it's about personal power and how you can kind of
Yes.
bridge that with other
Most
modalities.
definitely. I
um
mean, I also I mean, like, things that like, I mean, like, for like, my altar's like literally right here. But like, a lot of like more of like physical symbols and stuff like that. Like, I have an iron
mhm,
key. Like, things like that. Like, iron is like, it's super protective, that type of thing, because it absorbs that kind of negative energy.
mhm.
Um but yeah, like, I usually keep my key on my altar. I don't usually wear it with me or anything. But other people choose to, like, I know other witches that wear it on a regular basis. But like, that's kind of like, iron keys that's been a thing for I don't even know how long. So like stuff like that. Like it's not like I love that like it can that's like that's the beauty of witchcraft is that like exactly what you just said, Jake, that like it's come from that it comes from that personal power. So like
Mhm.
and like yes, you can have certain things that are predominantly used for protection or that type of thing, but like it's it's still like it's got to come from somewhere. Like you have to put your own thing into it, you know?
Mhm.
I think also for someone like myself, a lot of it's like goes into energy work. Like I'll
Yes.
activate a space, I'll activate a room, I'll call in the directions, I'll draw a pentagram to banish, unwanted energies. And it's just very much like almost setting up my own sacred space for my
Yeah.
clients and for myself. And also we want to have safe containers as we're practitioners, all of us are practitioners, and we want to make sure that our clients have a safe space. And the other question I want to ask is that, have you ever encountered maybe going to a spiritual event or something like that, and maybe that practitioner hasn't set up the space appropriately? What would you do in that kind of instance? Heavy question. Protect yourself. So I'm gonna tee it off. So number one, I
Yes.
think we have to take on our own personal responsibility to protect
Mm-hmm.
ourselves and protect our energy. So
Mhm.
it is not someone else's responsibility to ensure that you are protected. Yes, they should set up
Mm-hmm.
a safe container. It should be a safe space. And they obviously have the best and highest good that they're trying their best. But like you both said, I mean, there's a lot of power behind the spell
Yeah.
work and the witchcraft, and people probably don't realize the true power of what they're sending out. So
Mm-hmm.
there is call for your own personal responsibility and ensuring that you're protected, whether it's shields up, bringing in, for me, I like to bring in the angels, but I also like to bring in the elementals to protect me as well.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And then it's also when I leave a space, I make sure that any energy you borrowed from me, I take back. Whatever energy I
Mm.
borrowed from you, I send back. And I'm also cleansing, my energetic body, because we all get imbued, I'm going to use Jake's word, with all of these energies that are coming at us. And like you said, if I come across somebody who's in a pissy ass mood and is like, that fucking bitch, I mean, that goes to you, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
and then you gotta
Exactly. It's like,
send it back to
geez.
cinder, right?
Mhm.
Yes. Well, something that I've definitely found, and this is also kind of a shameless plug, but like with been doing my tarot classes,
Yes.
and I like it. I absolutely love them, and I love the people that I've been working with and
Sure.
everything. The students are fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
but there's definitely like we got into because they're like they know that I'll go off on a tangent, so like so they'll be like, hey Michelle, explain more about this. And I'm like, all right. So an hour later, we got to talking about using spirit and deities in reading tarot and having them help with divination in general.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we got to talking about that, and I said to them, I was like, look, like I set up protections, I like we're safe here. However, like when I start talking about my people, they will come as just a form of like, I'm here, you said my name, what do you need? And it's also a very basic form of protection. It's just like, and the energy shifted when we were all talking about it, because they also wanted to know like, okay, like who should I be working with, who's in like I've been very fortunate that I'm able to kind of connect with that to where I can kind of help people figure out who needs to be with who, or who they should at least start with before they start calling upon
Mm-hmm.
certain spirits and some things like that, or ancestors or deities. um and like the energy definitely shifted. It wasn't a bad energy at all, but it got very, very clustered. Where I was
Mhm.
like, okay, too many at once. Y'all need to back up. and I was like, look, like I'm like, you gotta make sure that you say before you leave here, you cannot come home with me. This is your you're coming into my personal space. I don't like I appreciate you, but no thank you.
Yeah.
And like I was like, make sure you're doing a cleansing, do all the all the stuff that we typically do. But like, I mean, I know like some students went home and they're like, it's like my animals knew something was up. Like they knew that, like, you know, and I was like, yeah, I mean, like it's probably like residual energy, or, you know, like your deity is kind of like, let's get to work. And you're like, no, not right now.
Yeah.
So that happens. It happens. So that's why um having your own protection, because like we can only do so much.
Yeah.
You know, because I value, I pride myself on being able to extend my circle in order to protect other people. But sometimes it's just you got to do that little extra bit of something, that little bit of extra energy work in order to make sure that you're protected.
What about for you, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback kind of what off of Michelle was saying. I kind of treat energy work and that exchange of energy, whether that's going to something like a reading, an energy healing, a seance, whatever, even a haunted location, because I do several of those as well. It's kind of like when you go into a friend's house and you take your shoes off before entering. I kind of wipe my slate clean before I enter someone's space, and then I'll also do the same thing while I'm leaving too, because I mean, while we're there maybe for a healing purpose, you know, we're also human too, so little things can slip through. And also it's just about calling back power at the end of the day as well. You know, giving back your stuff, I'll take back my stuff, you know. And you can still keep that energy that you received and exchanged, but it is good to do that kind of release and that reacclimation, just because it can be a very ungrounding experience. And it can be easy to kind of lose your tools or forget to implement your tools in those kinds of settings. So I think it's always nice to be mindful, of course. So taking a minute to kind of step back if you're in a session, or if you're in an energy healing and you have a moment where you're like, oh, I'm aware that I need to kind of refocus in. That's totally fine as well. And it's a push and pull. That is easier said than done. That I say from a place of been doing this for years, you know, so that's why I say to people, when you have that moment to be mindful, give yourself that favor of just kind of taking a breath, regrounding, reconnecting. You know, for me, I do a lot with the chords, you know, grounding to the ground, to grounding to, you know, the stars through the energy centers. And that is very kind of helpful for me. Whether you want to work with angels and kind of have them kind of do the background work for you should you forget a little bit, it's nice to have a nice little charcuterie board of different options, you know. That's what I call it, at least.
That I love that so much.
That is pretty funny. I like that. Now let's talk about maybe some things that okay. So before I got on this call, my partner was talking to me about how this is off topic. Our next door neighbor was invited to a seance while the person was using a Ouija board. Now, immediately to me, I'm like, they probably don't know what they're doing, number one. And number two, I'm like, you don't know what you're doing. So I'd be curious now, and I will say this, when I first kind of spiritual person, 10, 11, 12, whatever, I mean, there was Ouija board, and now Ouija boards have a really, you know, a negative rap. I feel like, I have an enchanted spell board that's actually underneath this laptop right now. That's what I use because there's protection on it. So what do you guys feel about, you know, maybe baby witches, maybe pulling out a Ouija board or something like that? Michelle's already laughing, or Jake's
already like, I got so many opinions. So like, Jake, maybe you should go first.
Jake.
You know what? It's really interesting. There's a lot of different perspectives, to be quite honest, with Ouija boards, and on the topic of spell boards. Because when I work, I've never personally worked with a Ouija board or a switchboard, whatever it is that you want to call it. I've had experiences when I was like way younger. But I think it's one of those things where, yes, it can be good and it can be bad. It can be quite in poor taste for people who maybe don't know what they're doing, because it is just an open channel that you're opening up. If you are doing it with, you know, a knowledgeable practitioner or a knowledgeable channeler, medium, whatever, then I think that's different in a controlled setting. You know, if I were to sit down with a Ouija board, it's not like I'm not going to be aware of what is slipping through the cracks.
Yes.
With that being said, I'll also say, so on one hand, there's the chance of it kind of being like you leave your screen door open and things can just come in and out. The other hand of that is, you know, a group of people who don't know what they're doing can pull out a Ouija board 10 times and have nothing happen. But the 11th time, something could.
Yep.
That's what it is. It's one of those things, again, it's working out of intention. But at the same time, I know of several practitioners who use spell boards or Ouija boards. I mean, if you think about it, using pendulums and pendulum mats
Absolutely.
are quite similar.
Absolutely.
So it really just kind of comes down to the tool and the modality and also the experience of the practitioner, you know? And I think to give yourself the best fair shake in this practice is to admit where you have less knowledge than you would like. And if you need to learn more to feel comfortable about doing something like that, then learn more, ask questions, reach out to people that you know are familiar, or look into books. I can't tell you how many books, videos I've listened to, workshops I've listened to, podcasts I've listened to. And at the end of the day, you kind of do your field work. That's with witchcraft, I feel like in general. You do your field work and you get a bunch of different opinions. And then you come back and you make an informed decision with what you feel comfortable with, you know?
100%.
So do I love Ouija boards? Not necessarily. But I do understand and I can appreciate the purpose that they do have in several instances.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate them in a seance setting.
And before I go to Michelle, I want to, do you feel like also like Hollywood and maybe the media has also given things that could be a good tool a bad rap?
You know what? Honestly, I would say if that question was in the context of any other tool or any other practice, I would
get
have
Ouija
something.
boards. I do.
I would say something different, but I actually think that I think I'm a little bit more glad that people have that fear base with it, because I think that now people are like, oh no, I won't even touch it. I would rather work somebody back from apprehension than pull them all the way out from just reaching for it. You know?
So then I guess I'm sorry, and Michelle, I know I gotta pivot too. Then why was this marketed as a kid's game? Like if it's a like honestly, like I've always, when I used to live in Ohio and they had a Ouija board in the closet and I would never use it. I was always scared. I'm like, no, I'm good, I'm just curious, like if it's a kid's toy, quote unquote, and it can bring in these entities or whatnot, like you said, it's a filter system, then why is it a product that we can still buy today? It's like cigarettes. Like
well, so if you think about it, the Ouija board is currently made by it's not Hasbro, it's
is it Mattel?
I can't remember the brand or which company it is, but it
I can look
is
it up though. It's
a
Hasbro.
children's toy company. Oh, Hasbro.
It is Hasbro.
My personal kind of off the cuff opinion would be that, children aren't old enough to have fear or have apprehension about it. It's more mystical, spooky, unknown. I think that Ouija boards are usually kind of marketed, that brand, to like young teens, that kind of thing. I seldom seen, many of my like adult like clients come by unless
the only people I know that use them are like teenagers.
Except I do hear the stories of they're always pulled out at a party. Everybody says that they don't own one until you're at a party.
Yes, this is very true. Well, because wasn't it like they got to be super popular because of the spiritualist movement? Yeah, and they were doing it like it was like form of like in the Victorian age, like literally like during parlor, like during their parties and everything, they would bring out a Ouija board because it was super popular.
I wonder if
it was like, oh, we're gonna contact the dead, but like a spirit board then,
I think that like we're still, even though we've had a lot of conflict regarding religion, beliefs, all that kind of thing, as since that movement had kind of started, I do think that society is still always missing the romanticism of the spiritualist movement, of the seance, of that really beautiful kind of dark romantic experience of connecting with the dead, connecting with something bigger than oneself, and the unsureness about what's going to happen. I think it's the same thing could be said to the people who love to race cars and ride roller coasters. It's that sense of wanting to be thrilled, and out of control. So I think that we're always subliminally kind of chasing that same experience and trying to recreate it. So that's why we see things like on TikTok of, the spirit boards made out of paper, and all of the people having odd experiences about that. The one with it was a pencil or something like that people were like stacking. You remember that? That was a couple of years ago.
I remember that too. Yep.
So I always love to kind of see the different incarnations that come up. I think it's quite fascinating.
Michelle, what do you think about Ouija boards and things like that, like different types of tools that maybe have a bad rap?
Well, I definitely feel like, well, because so the thing is, because like even like tarot has a bad rap.
Absolutely.
It's
Yep.
seen as like something that's evil, and
Well,
it's
how
just
many
not.
times have we been
It's
told our work is demonic?
exactly. And I'm just kind of like, no, I'm like, if you choose it to be, sure. But like when it comes to Ouija boards, like I view it as a just another divination tool, but also in the same realm as with tarot and things like that, where you know, like whatever kind of things you're using to contact the dead, an entity, a deity, whatever, you still need to have some sort of knowledge going into it and knowing what you're getting yourself into. Because it's definitely, and like, and kids are kids, whatever. Like you have like, and I do think that like definitely Hollywood has played into this whole, you know, like the lights going out and like you hearing dark like growling and blah 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 blah. And it's kind of like, all right, calm down. Um, am I gonna say that that's never gonna happen? No, but like, but like I have a lot of experience with Ouija boards, and I have had a lot of amazing experiences with them, and a lot of not so amazing experiences with them. Um, not to go into too much detail, but we'll say that there was a Ouija board that um myself and a few others overused, and it got to be where the protections were just like bouncing right off of it. Like I was like, we can't use this anymore. Like the things that are coming through do not mean us good. So we need to like wrap this up, pack it, make sure. Like I almost kind of like I equate it to how like the movie Jumanji, like with the actual like game.
Let's
Like
finish the
that's what I
game.
was like,
Finish the
wrap
game.
that up.
So that's a really good point, though. That's a really good point because it's the same thing. A
Yeah.
tool is a tool is a tool.
Right.
The more
Yes.
that I work with this tarot deck, you know, I've used it for a decade now. It is imbued with energy, imbued with
Yes.
a force behind it. So that's the kind of thing that I was saying earlier about you can use a board 10 times, but every time you touch it and activate it, you're charging it with intention.
Yes.
You are putting a purpose into it, you
Yeah.
know, and so it
And that
becomes
attracts
alive.
things.
Yeah.
Exactly. It attracts things. Like it's the same kind of thing that like, you know, if you look on the more positive end of things where you're trying to like, because a lot of our spiritual practices are empowering other people
Mm-hmm.
and helping them to see like their true, you know, inner self, and being able to use that and conquer those inner demons and moving forward and all that stuff. It is the same sort of thing where you have to look at these tools as almost like a person, because you're constantly like, it attracts certain energy. And if you want those tools to attract the right kind of energy that is going to help you, you have to be very mindful of that. Ouija boards, I definitely feel like, because there is so much negativity that surrounds it, they automatically attract that sort of negative energy as it is. So I really feel like it's up to the person that is using it, or the group that's using it, to really know what they're doing and to set up the protections that they should be setting up. Like, you know, I haven't in a long time, but we used to, like, we would spend a good hour setting up the space
Wow.
before using a Ouija board, because sometimes the things that would come through, you're like, and I would immediately be able to feel it and be like, nope, nope, we need to go to goodbye. We're done. We're not doing this right now. Like, absolutely not. And because it's not just grandpa coming through, you know?
Mhm.
And sometimes they pretend that they are grandpa. So that's why you want to make sure that you have somebody that is well aware, that is very viscerally aware of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you bring up a very valid point. I mean, both of you are very experienced practitioners, and you have very strong discernment, and you have very strong energetic boundaries and practice, that for maybe somebody who's newer to this, like, how are they going to know if they're really bringing in something that's not for their best intention?
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
mean,
I
I
mean,
would no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry.
I'd rather you jump in first.
Jake's like,
I'm
never
just
mind.
saying. Like, I was just gonna say that like it really comes from, it's it's that's a difficult question, because like a lot of this comes from
Is it
experience.
practice? Is it just
it's practice? It's like, because a lot of like, I mean, granted, this was my experience, is that um I mean, from a very young age, I always had experiences and things that I would see that didn't make sense to me. And as I, kind of like got through, all that stuff, and did my research and all that. And like there were definitely experiences that I had that were not good experiences.
Yeah.
But once I dove into it and understood what was happening, then I was able to either combat it or ask the appropriate questions to somebody that knew what they were doing. Now, granted, growing up, I didn't have access to people that knew what they were doing. I mean, I grew up in a very like Italian household that was Roman Catholic, and like we did not talk about these things. We did not discuss this type of stuff. But it was always like something that I always loved as a kid, and always knew who I was. But it's like I said, what I was saying, like I didn't have access to like somebody like me or Jake or you, Rachel. Like it's like I didn't have access to ask those questions, and for somebody to be like, maybe you shouldn't play around with the Ouija board. Maybe like, like, or if you want to, like, because I've said it before, where people that want to have experience with a Ouija board, or at least want to understand what it means, I'm like, okay, why don't you come and observe? I don't want you to touch it. I don't want you to be like, don't be a part of it. But like, why don't you come and observe? And if you feel like this is something that you want to get a part of, then okay, then we'll go from there. Because I'm also like just who I am inherently, like I just am very protective of anybody that wants to come in and learn any of this stuff, because I know it's on that the side of things, that the darkness that's there, and there's a lot of other people that have seen that and that work with it on a regular basis, and a lot of people, especially teenagers, they find this to be so romantic and so cool, and so like, ooh, like you're like, oh, Michelle comes dressed in black every day, and I'm like, yeah, first of all, it's slimming, second of all, super protective, like I'm dressed to protect myself. Like I like, granted, I love wearing black, but still, like it's not always fun and games. And that's where I feel like with the Ouija board, like, Hasbro needs to take a bit of a seat and be like, hey, like, let's maybe not like have a 5-year-old play with a Ouija board. Just my opinion. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think the only thing that I would really offer, jumping off from that, is anybody who is interested in kind of getting started or just starting out on their journey, take the time and really appreciate the beginning few chapters. Learn your tools, find your foundation, and take your foundation very seriously. Study up on what it means to cast a circle. To cast a circle, to close it afterwards. Take a look and take a look at the ritual of practice, of magic, of channeling, of all of those things. Energetic hygiene, closing of the circle, clearing of your space afterwards or beforehand, because I mean, just as important as it is to clear your space beforehand, is it's to consecrate the space beforehand, before your practice. Same as afterwards. It's push and pull. So take your foundation very seriously. If you're curious, learn a lot, read a lot, as much as you can. Go to libraries. Amazon Kindle store was so helpful for me, because I didn't have books, but the Kindle version of books were like $4, so you could really kind of luck out. And I am very thankful for this generation of the internet, where I learned a lot of my craft from the 2012 through 2015 like witchcraft practitioners on YouTube. It was
that was
like
the good heyday, though. That was good.
Oh my God,
because like
it was
now
like,
it's a little.
it was like the golden age, I'm telling you.
Yes.
And me and Rachel talk about this, like as far as like even like Hay House, Blue Angel, and all of that like goes, the big publishers. That time, 2012 to 2015, was really such a beautiful, juicy time. Yes. And now it's about kind of finding like where everybody has kind of dispersed since then. But I would say find your practitioners who feel right, and that you
Yes.
see yourself in.
And I think also reach out to community. There's a lot of people that are local, probably to your area, or even online and whatnot. There's a lot of like-minded individuals that want to walk the path with you. And there's some maybe a couple steps ahead that will, maybe offer mentorship or guidance or whatnot. I mean, I think the three of us have experienced moments where it's kind of scared us. And we've had moments maybe with entities or, I mean, we're all like, I'm like going back like 20 plus years, and we're there. I've encountered some scary shit, but I think the point of what I'm trying to say is that we get through it. Like we can bring in our angels, we can bring in our protection, we can work through it. And we're divine human beings connected to source, and I do feel like we'll be okay. Like
absolutely
protections, and I think what both of you hit on, they're also learning experiences. Oh, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to work with that person again. That dude's evil.
Well, exactly. And I feel like that there's a lot of that misconception of that if you do work with a Ouija board or any of this stuff, that like what I was saying before, like all those like creepy, nefarious things are going to happen, where like all of a sudden a demon is going to manifest in your bedroom. And like, it's like, no, like, I understand where that fear would come from. And like, look, again, like anything can come out of this. And like, there's definitely been experiences that I have had that, when I didn't know any better, were horrifying. But that's like, experience makes you more knowledgeable. There is a lot of kind of crash course when it comes to dealing with Ouija boards, with dealing with witchcraft in general, because like there's so much to it, and there's so many different experiences and so many different narratives that like like everything that you were saying, Jake, about like going and reading and asking questions and all of that stuff, like it makes such a huge difference in your practice and how you deal with things on a day, that things that are not, that like the Ouija board maybe not being necessarily the most positive thing in the world. But it really depends upon the person. It depends upon the practitioner. It depends upon what you decide to do with it. Yeah.
No, I mean,
my own 2 cents there.
I mean, definitely get out books. I mean, a lot of my books are spell books, and just witchcraft books. And it's not something I really talk about a lot because I didn't until Jake and Michelle, and we have Melissa does some stuff too, and it's just like, now it's like, to actually talk about it. Before you really, I mean, I honestly was never really had people to talk about it until now. So I'm grateful for the both of you. And and it's just and I like that we all kind of draw on different tools. Like I know Jake and I really connect with crystals, and and you connect with some, the keys, and I'm gonna go get some iron keys, and and I just think that's fascinating. And it's almost like, find what works for you, find the mentors that work for you, find the books that speak to you, go on YouTube. Jake loves YouTube, and every time we go on a call, he talks about, go to YouTube and maybe Google 2012 to 2015 and pull up those old videos. And
they know what they're talking about. 100% know what they're talking about.
I'm grateful for that, and I'm definitely gonna use that. Anything else you guys want to add before we wrap up? Jake, Paul, Michelle, Rachel, the beauty of gray.
What do I want to add?
What do I want to add? Oh my goodness, I have to tell you, I know we were talking about witchcraft, but there has been this angel little wing with me this whole time. And I will show you both. This was my very first tool that I used when I first became a spiritual. I had to get a new one because I used it so much. So when I first became a spiritual practitioner or whatever, this was my tool, was an enchanted spell board. And I love it.
That's so great.
I love that.
That is fantastic.
Let's see if I can reach my...
And I will tell you, it's not something I really pull out for anyone. It's a personal tool. It's something that I alone use it. You know, and I've used this type of tool, I think, since I was 16 years old. So, and I used the first one so much, I had to get a new one.
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Jake, what do you want to
too
show
funny.
us?
Oh, I had to show you. I don't have a spirit board, but I do have something quite similar. So it's a little pendulum bottle, if you can see that. Okay.
Ooh, oh, I love pendulum bottles so much. They're so pretty.
I have never seen that.
Oh my God, so fun. You really just kind of,
Yes.
do all your clearing work, all your clearing space, set up the channel of who you want to
What do you
chat with,
call
and then
that?
Pendulum bottle.
Oh my gosh.
They're super easy to make too.
Witches. I
So
have witches
easy.
balls up in my windows.
I love a witch ball.
Who doesn't? Sorry.
Period.
Michelle, anything else you want to add before I go out and find a pendulum jar?
Make
them?
Yeah, oh, yeah, I made this one. Yeah.
It's super easy. Yeah. Just get like a regular, like
okay, all right. Next episode, we're talking about how to do one. All right.
Perfect.
Michelle,
they're so much fun. I would say, especially just when it comes to researching and when it comes to like finding the right people that vibe with you in order to ask those questions, just be very careful, because especially now, which I love and I also hate, where there is a lot of witchcraft is very trendy now, incredibly trendy, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of people that are very young, in both just physically and just in their practice, that think they know what they're talking about, but they don't, unfortunately. And I just say that anybody that's starting out, or even just like in the middle of their craft, or they've been doing this for years, and just be careful about the information that is out there. Because if you see, for instance, TikTok, if you see like a spell working on Witch Talk,
Mike's favorite topic.
I definitely feel like that there are some legit people out there, but there's so much that is just bogged down on Witch Talk that is just, it's nonsense. There's so much nonsense that I'm like, I can't. And I get because I obviously, like, it's on my TikTok all the time. So I see stuff where I'm just like, I can't, if I comment, I know I'm going to get hit with a bunch of hate. So it's like, God forbid. Like,
literally,
it's rough. Yeah.
I don't need a bunch of 13-year-olds calling me a slur on TikTok.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's like, no, thank you. I don't want to, like, you go ahead and you think that you can go hex the moon. Have fun.
So I honestly think this should be our next topic, is that we talk about witch talk. So upcoming,
we could spend a whole few hours talking about witch talk.
Upcoming on The Beauty of Grey is going to be witch talk, because Rachel is not on TikTok and chooses not to be on it. But Jake and Michelle can run me through it, and how sometimes it can be, as Jake said, trouble to be an informed practitioner.
Yes.
So
it can be very toxic on the TikTok.
I'm going to protect myself for this one. So I just want to say thank you both for coming on The Beauty of Grey, and I look forward to talking with all of you soon.
Yes, thank you for having me. And thank you for listening, everyone. Make sure you subscribe, comment, share, like, everything.
Yes, all of the above.
Do it all.
Do the plug.